What's up, y'all? It's Zach with Living Corporate. Now, look, every now and then we try to mix it up for y'all because, so look, dependency and consistency is really important. But even within those lanes of consistency, you got to have a little bit of variety. You know what I mean? You don't come home and just eat the same thing every day. Or even if you do, you got a meal prep thing. Maybe sometimes you put a little red sauce. Maybe sometimes you put a little green sauce. You got to just, mix it up from time to time. Maybe sometimes you grill it. Maybe sometimes you saute. Maybe sometimes you rotisserie. You got to just... Am I hungry? Yes, I'm hungry, y'all. My bad. Listen, check it out. We have another entry for y'all from our See It to Be It series. Amy C. Waninger, CEO of Lead at Any Level, as well as the author of Network Beyond Bias. She's actually been a member of the team for a while now. So shout out to you, Amy. Yes, thank you very much for all of your work here. And part of her work has been in driving the series called See It to Be It. And the purpose of the series is to actually highlight Black and brown professionals in these very prestigious roles, like within industries that maybe we, and when I say we, I mean Black and brown folks, I see y'all, that we may not always even know exist or envision ourselves in, hence the name of the series, right? So check this out. We're going to go ahead and transition from here. The next thing you're going to hear is an interview with Amy C. Waninger and a super dope professional. I know y'all going to love it. Catch y'all next time. Peace.
Kathleen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me, Amy. I appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you so much. Okay. And I want to jump right in because you've had so much going on lately, and I want to make sure we get to all of it.
Sure.
Can you tell our audience a little bit about your background in the education space, the non-for-profit and community service?
Sure. So I'll kind of start senior year of college. I had a quarter life crisis. I was studying exercise science in college, thought I was going to pursue a career in healthcare, and then had a friend tell me, I don't think you want to do this. And I said, yes, I think you're right. She knew I was super passionate about education. I'm a child of immigrants. Both of my parents immigrated to Canada for their education. And so that's just always been something that's been kind of a through line and really kind of a foundation for me. But I had never thought about pursuing or opening that door and trying to enter that sector until this friend helped me see the light. And so essentially I graduated college and entered an AmeriCorps program called City Year. And it was this perfect opportunity for me to enter, the landscape of education. I wasn't exactly sure if I wanted to be a teacher, but I wanted to be in the classroom to engage with young people and see if that was a space that I wanted to be a part of. And so City Year was this perfect happy medium where I was able to step into the classroom, support a teacher, facilitate small groups, help build culture and climate at a school, and really, kind of put my foot in the door within education. I did that for 2 years. Basically a year in, I thought, teaching, it's not for me. And I'll say never because who knows, what could happen. But I recognize, I applaud teachers and they are, our heroes really amongst us. But I was like, I don't quite want to do that. But I want to stay involved with young people. So I want to support them and, be involved in some sort of program that works with young people and just support them in being, their best selves. So that took me to Embarc, where we do experiential learning. And so it has been such a privilege. We're a nonprofit, and we believe experiences matter. So we actually tap our city as a classroom. We believe that learning takes place beyond the four walls of the classroom. I think, if we think about what we learned in physics or algebra in high school, I don't think many of us are using the quadratic formula in our everyday lives. We're networking with people. We are, just all these different socio-emotional skills that are just so necessary to be able to thrive and do well in kind of whatever path you choose in that post-secondary space. And so Embarc is an opportunity for young people to really to gain and grasp all that knowledge, to meet people, to see people who look like them, doing things that they didn't even know quite existed or is possible for them. And so it's been really just a great privilege to be curating experiences for the past few years, kind of being within that space.
That's fantastic. And so you're with Embarc, you were working with high school age kids?
High school students. Yep.
Okay.
High school students.
And so tell me a little bit about, because I know you said it's kind of like field trips on steroids, right? Yes. It's how you described it to me before.
Yeah.
And so can you give us an example or tell us a story from one of those events?
Sure. So one of the experiences, we took students to Digitas, which is an ad agency in downtown Chicago. And oftentimes when we are building these experiences, we believe that learning can take place anywhere. And so, we had a connection with somebody who worked at the ad agency, and we thought, hey, would you be open to opening your doors, having some high school students walk in this building and learn about what you do in your day-to-day life to help them understand, what a career kind of in the ad world looks like. I mean, we all watch TV for the most part. We see commercials and, laugh at them sometimes, or sometimes don't laugh at them because sometimes they're not that great. But, there's a whole set of people who work and put those things together. And so it was great to build that experience. We brought a classroom of students to this downtown Chicago building. And we actually met with a woman who was actually from the neighborhood of where the students were coming from. And she had this just incredible story. Something that we always try to do in Experience is, there's the interactive part of students being able to learn about the career and participate in challenges to help them really understand what is it that these individuals do. But then we also make sure just to have some storytelling with the people that they're working with and have them share, how did they get here, and, take advice and just do Q&A. And so this experience was just especially important to me because it was this really powerful moment where this woman who came, from the same neighborhood that the students also come from, had a very similar story and background and just was relatable to the students who looked like them, who had just very similar family backgrounds to them as well, understood just the struggle that they sit in as students from their neighborhood, and then was able to tell them, like, it wasn't perfect, was just very candid with them about, the different steps, different challenges, drawbacks she had to kind of get where she was at now. And, told them, hey, if you want to talk more, I want to make that time, available and space and be here for you as well. And so those are always moments that I'm like, yes, this is why we do what we do, because you don't know what you don't know. And so for students to step into that space where they felt like it's downtown Chicago, many of them don't go there super often, feel like they don't quite belong in spaces like that. Because, we work with Black and brown students, and oftentimes, corporate America is very white for the most part. And so when you're able to meet individuals who look like you and can actually, relate to, that's just incredibly powerful. And, helping them kind of broaden just their worldview of what's possible for them.
Well, that's a mission close to my heart, because that's what this whole interview series is about, is helping people see what's possible for them, in the community, in the economy, and in their careers. Because so many of us don't see all of these jobs every day. Yes. And it's so hard to imagine something if you don't know it exists. So I applaud you for that. I think that's such a wonderful way to invest in your community. Yep. But I'm sure you were on a similar learning journey to your students in terms of seeing things that you maybe didn't know existed, or, just building your own network. And that's well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, obviously what we do for the young people is awesome, right? What we do, but even just for myself, being part of the program and making connections, I've been able to see it. I'm not from Chicago as well. So as somebody who, didn't grow up in the area, it's just super important for me to really understand and listen to people who've been there and understand the story and what's happened, and just talk to real people. And so for me, and just in my own development, it's been really important as I've built connections and, gotten to know the city through just these various experiences. It's been really powerful, just even for myself and my own development.
That's great. And I'm sure those skills have come in handy because, so you worked with Embarc for a while, but you recently relocated out of Chicago. Yeah. And you have the dubious honor of having conducted a job search during a global pandemic. Yes. And I would imagine that there are a number of our listeners who are in a similar situation where, for whatever reason, the economy is changing anyway. A lot of people are finding themselves in transition right now. Can you talk a little bit about what you've learned and what the process looked like
Sure.
interviewing without being able to leave the house, for example, or some of the other struggles that you faced?
Sure. It has been a time. I never envisioned that I would be job hunting during a pandemic. When I say those words, I'm like, wow, this is so interesting. But really, and I'll be so honest, there are times where it was just incredibly discouraging because I had so many, hopes and dreams and kind of what I thought it might look like as I relocated and just different sectors I was interested in. And, so many sectors have just been so impacted by the pandemic. And, a lot of people are, pausing hiring and a lot of hiring freezes. And so as a job seeker in this time, you're like, okay, where does that leave me? And kind of now what opportunities can I pursue? And so really, I think there was a few weeks there where I was just pretty discouraged and I kind of started just applying to anything and everything because I just said, hey, I have bills and, need to just gather some sort of income. But, I actually took a break, which, in kind of job seeking 101, I don't think is probably encouraged to do so because it's like you need to get a job. So you send in your 100 applications each day and kind of keep on it. But I had gotten to a point where it was so, demoralizing at a point where you're just like, I don't know, on top of just the mental health impacts of, being stuck at home and just, all of that and navigating that as well. It was just a lot to manage. So I said, we're just going to take some time off. And, there are things that I know where I can take care of myself and just step away from all the job applications and do that. It provided a reset for me because when I came back, I thought, okay, Kathleen, what do you know how to do well? And that's building relationships. And so I got on LinkedIn and, just stalked people on LinkedIn and was like, hey, I had made a list of the different areas I was interested in. And so I started reaching out to people in those areas, whether they were in the area where I relocated to, or just kind of anywhere from just kind of different networks, reaching out to friends and their networks, asking them to help me out. And so I just started having conversations with people. And that actually lifted my spirits. And for me, I'm an extrovert, so I really enjoyed it. Depending on who you are, you have to do things that make sense for who you are. But for me, that it was like a breath of fresh air for me. And, lo and behold, I eventually, I started building connections here in the city where I relocated. And people started saying, we're going to get you a job. I know the circumstances look really grim right now, but we're going to help you out. We're going to get you a job. You've communicated what you're looking for, your preferences, and, we're going to help you out. And, so that's been amazing and incredible when you just are kind of, put it out there, and people receive that. And, people are just, for the most part, very kind and want to help, for the most part. That's what a big learning I've learned from this process is people want to help. And if they can help, they will help. And so it's been through my connections that I've been sent different job opportunities that I didn't even see just from, my own job search engines that I've been using, but they are kind of in the know about positions that were about to be posted and were able to send them my way. And so, that's led me to now I'm currently interviewing for a position that was, sent to me by somebody that I connected with. And just yesterday, she said, hey, I just emailed them, at the employer and, wanted to just give them a good note about how great you are, just cause. And I thought, what? Yeah, I don't even know you. Like, I've only talked to you for 45 minutes for one conversation. But, how do you leave just a really lasting impression with these individuals who you're making connections with? And so that's just been a really big learning is in this time of a lot of uncertainty and unprecedented times, as we're saying, fall back on what you know how to do well. And for me, I knew that was talking to people. So I used that and it's now, brought me to a place that, despite the limited opportunities because of the crisis, I'm still, in a much better place and really looking forward to, where I land in terms of opportunity wise for my next chapter.
That is so wonderful. And I know last time we spoke, I said, I hope that you have multiple amazing offers to choose from. And it looks like we're going to keep our fingers crossed, but it looks like that's what's happening right now. But no, I think it's fantastic. And one of the things that you said, which I found to be true too, Kathleen, is, you struggle, push. Mm-hmm. And then all you had to do was just stop and let the universe catch up with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just allow yourself space to take a deep breath, right? It's like it's like if you feel like you're drowning, right? And you start to panic and you're splashing and you're going crazy in the water. it's like you're never going to get anywhere, right? But just take a deep breath, float on your back, regain some strength, regain some energy, and it'll look so much different when you come back. And so it's just an interesting push and pull that I'm finding in the universe. It seems like not the harder I work, because I always work hard.
Yeah.
But the harder I try, the further away things seem to be.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, but if I work hard and I'm not trying so hard, like I'm just in my flow and I'm doing my thing. Right. And, like you said, what you're good at, what comes naturally, it's like the right things find you. Yeah. And I'm so glad to hear that that's happened for you, especially right now.
Yes. I especially right now. Yep. Yep. I would agree.
Absolutely. Now, one other thing I wanted to talk to you about, it's been a tough news cycle for everybody around the world, but I want to make sure that we speak to how incredibly difficult the news cycles have been lately for Black folks in this country, and the impact that has. You use the phrase, the compounding impact of news trauma. And can we talk just a little bit about that and what that looks like from your perspective? And I know you said you've been in some dark places lately with us, and can you just sort of share with our listeners sort of how this feels for you? I'm sure a lot of them will be able to relate, but also how are you coping with this?
Sure. Thanks for asking, Amy. So it's a lot. And I've kind of, sitting in where we're at in this pandemic, I see everything now as there's pre-corona world and then the world we live in now. And so I think about that time of life before, kind of is really how I see it sometimes. And life now, I mean, just even going to work is draining sometimes. And going to work is, coming to sit at my desk in my basement and attend meetings for work and do that. But just that alone just can be exhausting at times because of the nature of, being home for the extended amount of time that we have. So someone like me who, I really thrive off of my relationships with others and, enjoy seeing people and hanging out with people. Social media, I actually, when the pandemic happened, or at least, in quarantine and lockdown, I turned off social media just because I was like, this is too much. Can't handle this. But then I found myself being isolated and I was like, I need to see something. So I hopped back on and trying to just kind of find boundaries of, okay, how much time do I allow this? Do I allow myself to be on here and do this? But then as we all know, image and video, one after the other, of the, unjust killings of people who look like me, of Black men and women, of trans Black men and women as well. And it makes me think, I'm like, okay, well, in a pre, non-COVID world, there was almost a way for me to kind of escape and numb a little bit of the pain and the grief when, that news came out, because there was always kind of somewhere to go. I either had to go to work or I worked a part-time. There was, there was ways to escape it, which also is not healthy. So that there's that. And I'm a big proponent and huge advocate of therapy and counseling. And that's something I personally invest in. But now when you're in this world where there is nowhere to go, and so you're sitting at home with just you and your thoughts, a dark place is, like you mentioned, is where I've gone, because I'm not entirely sure how to cope. When, being in a pandemic is something none of us have really gone through. So what kind of, oftentimes when you go through experiences, I feel like we build up kind of toolkits of how to navigate said situation. But when you're in a kind of a brand new one and you're like, what transferable skills, like how can that, and you're kind of coming up empty. And then on top of that, you see these lynchings happen. It's a lot to swallow. Honestly, I'm incapable of, digesting the information. And then I look at my calendar and I have some tasks to work on. Nothing seems to matter. Everything is kind of meaningless because another person has been lynched. Another Black man, another Black woman has been lynched. And I don't know how to deal or how to cope. And I'm trying to figure out how to cope. I'm a person of faith. And so I thank God for another just day of life. But then I'm like, okay, well, now what? What do I do? I'm not entirely sure. And kind of grasping for answers. I don't think I have it figured out. I think today I told myself I need to call my therapist. I haven't talked to her in quite some time. And actually really throughout this entire pandemic time, I haven't been in therapy sessions because it's something I had stopped. But I'm realizing I'm like, I need to reach out for support and so for help. And so for me, I know that's one way I hope to cope with this is, and I'm a verbal processor, so I know I can't hold all of this in because it's just not healthy. So that is one step that I hope to do and will take kind of very, very soon, if not today. But it's, I mean, it's a lot to sit with, and really I plead with kind of, if you are a supervisor, you know, listening, and or boss, and things like this happen, checking in with your staff to see how are you doing. And because it's like, you can't ask me to, you know, submit or work on this thing when my mental capacity is just not going to be there. It really is not. And so I really, you know, I plead that, you know, people are aware of kind of what's going on, especially if you're a non-Black person and you have kind of folks, you know, Black folks in your life, and just what are we asking of them, kind of me, you know, and of us in this time, and to be aware and mindful of that. But yeah, I don't quite have an answer on how to deal, because I'm still right now trying to figure that out. But it's been especially difficult to navigate in the midst of kind of just everything going on, and navigating a pandemic. So
yeah, I appreciate your use of the word lynching, and it's a historically significant and accurate depiction of what's going on. You know, one of the things that you touched on is the role of video.
Right.
And in that, I see such a double-edged sword, because these videos are traumatic. They are violent. I mean, there are videos of people being killed, right? Right. Circulating on social media, which I think is horrific. And so, you know, it's traumatic for me to see. I'm sure it's traumatic, you know, even more traumatic when, you know, you more closely identify with the victims of these crimes. But then by the same token, if the videos didn't exist, the perpetrators wouldn't be held to account. And what a horrible, horrible, you know, juxtaposition of facts that is. Yes.
Yeah. And it's, you know, and I've been getting louder and louder on social media to say, like, we can't, that, you know, the videos of the lynchings can't circulate, because it's just, yeah, like I said, traumatic. But in the Amy Cooper case, if we didn't have that video, I don't know if, you know, I know now, we all know she's been let go, right from her job, and I think her dog was taken away, and, you know, that sort of thing. And, you know, who would that have happened if, you know, the video wasn't there? So, but her video is interesting because, you know, nobody's getting killed in that video per se, but it is this double-edged sword where it's like, the video should not have to exist, right? For people to believe or to understand. That's not, you know, we shouldn't live in a world where you have to see somebody getting lynched to feel for them, or, right, you know, be moved to take action or anything. So,
yeah, but let's be clear, in the Amy Cooper video, because, you know, you talked about, well, no one was getting killed in that video. You know, Amy Cooper watches the same news we all watch.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Amy Cooper has seen numerous incidents of Black men being shot first and questions asked later for minor offenses like, you know, wearing a hooded sweatshirt, or, you know, playing with a toy gun in a park, or, you know, standing in Walmart, or sleeping in their own bed.
Yeah.
And while the outcome of that particular video was that no Black person was killed, certainly she knew by picking up the phone that was a possible outcome of her actions.
Sure. Right.
And, you know, there's no escaping that in this world, right? There's no way she could plead ignorance on that point.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think the violence is there. I mean, the fear that I would feel if I knew that somebody could murder me with absolute immunity.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And watch somebody call in that hit on me or attempt to, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's what's happened. And, and then just, the same day in the news, we see, exactly that happen, right? We see, the murder of a man by the police. And so I just, I don't think that any person in this country can plead ignorance about the possibilities of what can happen.
Right.
When police are unnecessarily called to a scene involving a racial incident. I want to put a point on that because, and here's the thing that I've learned, Kathleen, is white people won't hear it if a white person doesn't say it. And I want my voice to be heard saying, like, this is not okay. We know better. We know what happens. It's not enough for us to pretend that this doesn't exist or to look the other way or to not engage in it, right? We have to actively dismantle this.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Because if we don't actively dismantle it, if we white folks don't actively dismantle it, we are perpetuating it. We are perpetuating it. And this cannot continue.
Totally. And I mean, I think my thoughts too around that is just that, Amy Cooper's, I think there's some stuff going on that she was quote unquote liberal. And so there's like this whole thing about party lines and that whole thing as well. But, Amy Cooper's who, allow just white supremacy and, lead to Black death. That's just ultimately kind of, what that gets to. And so it has to be called out and said, for what it is and what happened. But it's just, there's a lot. There's a lot.
Yeah. 400 years of unchecked racism and white supremacy.
Yeah.
These are not isolated incidents. They're a pattern. They're an inevitable pattern of the sins of our past. And until we reckon with them, we're just going to have to do better. I mean, we just have to.
Yeah.
And I don't want to belabor the point, but I know that that's something that's on a lot of people's minds. And, you had spoken so from the heart about that. And I wanted to be sure to touch on that because it is top of mind for so many people. And, in particular, in communities of color. And I'm just so sorry.
Yeah. And I'll say even just in Black communities, right? I think it's important. I think there's this sometimes notion and I try to always push back, using people of color jargon sometimes or using that. And of course, people of color all face various injustices and things, but I think specifically in these instances of an Amy Cooper and, what happened with George and with everybody else, right? It's affecting Black bodies and so it's affecting Black communities. So just being sure to just, make that very distinct.
And I was thinking, even as I said it, I was thinking, no, I meant to use the word Black. Hispanic and Latino communities have their own issues with, threats of deportation and things like that. So it's a different policing and a different mechanism of control, but the root of the racism is very much the same.
Definitely.
So. Oh my goodness. Well, Kathleen, thank you so much for your time today. I know we got really deep and we didn't really end on a really high note, but I know that it is a lot, right, to deal with all of the news and all of the pandemic and the job search and the relocation. And if I may share, you had wedding plans for this fall that you've had to change as well.
Yes.
But the wedding's still on.
The wedding's still on. It just will most likely look very different from what we originally planned. But that is, I mean, and this pandemic is such this mix of emotions that, just on the spectrum. And, it's tough. If you had told me that, oh no, you probably aren't going to throw the huge party that you thought, I'd be thinking, absolutely not. Like I've always wanted the big party and whatever. But, this time with my thoughts has made me just recognize what's actually most important here. And that's what needs to get done. And so now I'm, most likely throwing this like small intimate affair that I never knew I needed. But it's happening, and I wouldn't, have come to that realization if it were not for the current circumstance that we are in, which is, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's where we sit now. So, Yeah, love is not canceled. That's the hashtag I've seen going around.
I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Kathleen,
Yep.
Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
the culmination of your job search. I'm so thrilled for you. And
Thank
I
you,
look
Amy.
forward to great things from you in the future.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on.
You bet.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.